What are you gonna do?
Break the cycle.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Harry, and these are all the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the final act of Arcane. Guys, the writers, animators, and everyone involved with this show absolutely cooked with this series, and these last 3 episodes prove it, so let's get right to it. Hey, did you find it yet? Guys, Doug sent me to the back of the store to find some DVD. I've never even been in this part of the store. I think we used to sell art supplies from back here, so that's why everything looks different. We begin with episode 7, which is essentially Arcane's What If episode. It takes place in an entirely different universe, one that is meant to show how different things could have been if certain choices had been made differently, and this distinction is made in the intro. Every episode begins with a jukebox selecting a record with Vi and Jinx in a yin-yang-like pose across from each other. However, in this episode, Echo takes Vi's spot, and across from him is not Jinx, but Powder. We see our Echo Freaky Friday swap in this alternate timeline, and we get some glimpses of his room. On the shelves, we see 3 masks, and one of them on the far left looks as if it could belong to the league champion, Jin. As he tries to understand what's going on, he checks out his reflection on a grandfather clock, and we can see that he's got a fresh new set of threads. The green suit looks a lot like one of Echo's in-game skins, specifically his Battle Academia suit. He's interrupted by Powder, whom he initially mistakes for her terrorist doppelganger in his timeline. Now, the mistake is even reflected visually, with Jinx's cold, depressed reflection on the grandfather clock, where Powder's warm smile should be. We also see a small strand of pink bundled into Powder's blue hair, likely memorializing her sister. Another fun detail is that when Benzo enters the room, we can see a Rabadon death cap behind Echo.
That just looks like a hat to me, person.
Well, yes, but it's also an expensive legendary item from League that players can buy for increased ability power, something his character uses a lot. It tends to be something players go for in the late game when they are more flush with gold, which shows just how much more established Echo is in this timeline. Now, as Echo is trying to grasp this new reality, Powder says to Benzo,
You know those ugly twins. Genius and madness.
which is yet another link to the duality themes of Season 2. The hand gesture she makes is something she picked up from her mother. We saw it in the last episode when Victor was healing Vander's memories, and during Jinx and Echo's bridge fight in Season 1, when he sees a glimpse of Powder in between the swings of his pocket watch. I love seeing Arcane just fully realized on screen because League of Legends means so much to so many people. The game has so many layers. It's not just a smash 'em up, it requires math and critical thinking, and these are things that I was always terrible at in school, but now that I'm older, I wish I understood stuff like math, science, or computer programming language.
Alas, there is no way for you to learn any of those subjects because you are sad and old.
Actually, Doug, I can learn math, science, and computer programming with Brilliant. They're the sponsor of this video. Brilliant is an amazing way to learn. You see, with Brilliant, you have access to thousands of interactive lessons in math, data analysis, programming, and AI. So, if you want to learn something like coding, they have short, simple lessons that are filled with hands-on problem solving, not by listening to some teacher drone on and on. You can learn math, science, computer science, or like everyday things like how much rent to charge for an Airbnb. Brilliant has also taught me new problem-solving skills that have made me better at my job. And believe me, I have to analyze a lot of data analytics, so I've learned how to visualize that data. And this kind of thing used to scare the crap out of me when I was in high school, but Brilliant makes it easy. You see, the trick is I do a little bit of learning every morning instead of doom scrolling on my phone. And these days I would take any excuse to stay off social media. Learning and practicing math has actually become very soothing for me. Or I learn on the go for quick practice lessons or to try a new lesson. And like I said, you can use Brilliant to learn theoretical concepts or to actually get real hands-on knowledge of programming. You can use their applied courses in Python programming languages, creative coding, and more. Or you can learn general science or something more specific like how large language models work. Even understanding that has made me understand how AI works, which has made me better at my job. So to try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/ScreenCrush or scan the QR code on screen, or you can click the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. It's so much fun and you won't regret giving Brilliant a try. Now back to Arcane. Then we get into the intro, which includes even more changes. We see Echo in the first frame across from Jinx with a line connecting them, as well as a split-second shot of the blue peony necklace that he gives her at the end of the episode. Another split-second frame includes a shot of Heimerdinger during Echo's rewind, foreshadowing his untimely demise later in this episode. Then we start with just how different this timeline is. Nearly every tragic death has been avoided here. Vander, Benzo, Clagger, and Milo are still alive. Everyone is part of a big happy family and even have enough downtime to play games together, as evidenced by their scorecards on the wall of the last drop. Milo and Klangor are working on ways to purify the air in Zon naturally, showing that Zon didn't need Piltover to save it. They're picking up where Vander and Silco left off. They're not stuck in an endless cycle. This timeline has actually made some forward progress. Now their waiter at the last drop is Gert, the lead Jinxer that we've seen in previous episodes. In this timeline, her hair is blonde since she doesn't have to paint the town blue. Instead of leading them into battle like Jinx was, Powder sets her up in a date with Milo. In fact, she is setting everyone up. In this reality, Powder has really followed in Vander's footsteps after losing her sister. She's taking the lesson Vi never learned in season 1 and bringing them to the nth degree, possibly even too far, hence why Vander tells her,
I think you're too smart to spend your life in a bar.
Yeah, he's got a point there.
oh, he's absolutely right. The Jinx we know is a revolutionary, a symbol much bigger than herself or even her intentions. She is a force of chaos that shapes the politics of her world. She's so much more than just a bartender, but this whole episode is about possibility. How drastically different things would be if the dominoes before it fell just in a slightly different way. Echo's mind can't digest all of these possibilities in his new reality at once, giving him holographic hextech indigestion, which is when Heimerdinger realizes that his Echo is back in the saddle.
Wait, hold on, person. That makes no sense.
Right, so Heimerdinger arrived in this timeline first, saying he's been there for
1,128 days, 6 hours, and 20 minutes.
which is about 3 years, and it seems he's picked up music as a hobby during his downtime. You gotta love how the finger buttons on his steampunk banjo look like the buttons from Guitar Hero. He says that they can't leave because no one here has invented hex tech in his timeline.
Yeah, but person, wasn't he there for 3 years? I mean, couldn't he have taught them?
Yeah, Doug, look, I admit it's a little sus, and I do think that it's why he doesn't even look Echo in the eye when telling him. He doesn't really want to go back, and we know that to be true by the end. However, Jace is the exact opposite. We see him wake up in a green, foggy hellscape. I mean, like literal hellscape, but not your typical fire and brimstone like the hell that we see in the Bible, but something more akin to the cold, misty Helheim from Norse mythology. It's fitting given it's literally filled with the graveyard his invention created. We then flip back to Echo, who's visiting Vi's gravesite with Powder, which happens to be the same place as Jinx's hideout in our timeline. On her desk, we don't see the signature bunny that Vi gave her in season 1, but rather we see a pair of bunny ears, which holds a lot of symbology. In the first season, her bunny represents a childhood that Vi could never hold on to. It was stuck on a roof, and they retrieved it after the heist in season 1. She had to grow up first, but she could allow Powder to have that, which is the symbol of why she gave her the doll. But in this universe, she died in the heist. She never retrieved the doll. It's stuck there forever. Nevertheless, Vi's death gave her sister the chance to have a normal childhood, so she didn't need the bunny, she became it. You know, guys, we are going to really miss talking about Arcane with you. We've had so much fun geeking out with you about it on our Discord server, which, by the way, is free to join. On our Discord, you can also find news about our upcoming live shows. We are coming to Washington, D.C. on December 2nd and Chicago on December 8th. Now, my favorite part of the live shows is getting to meet you guys and nerd out together and just be together face to face. And we're also doing this new thing where we're going to brainstorm and create a brand new ScreenCrush video live and in person. It's a lot of fun.
Hey, as long as you're plugging stuff, talk about those t-shirts.
Yes, we have just launched a ton of new gift merch that we are so excited to finally get to show you guys. We have this I Hate You 3000, a parody of the Iron Man Mark I armor wearing Dr. Doom's green cloak, and this awesome portrait inspired by Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam, featuring Tony Stark giving life to Ultron, and that one is drawn by comic artist Mark Spears. But we also have Marty McFly in Cloud City, a parody of this.
My name is Darth Vader. I am an extraterrestrial from the planet Vulcan.
And this evil will always triumph because good is dumb, plus Grogu booping a Rancor's face, and this awesome Loki gator coming out of a toilet. So guys, we have a big holiday sale happening this weekend where you can get different collections and bundles. If you want to find out about that, you can sign up for merch updates by subscribing to our newsletter for special sales and exclusive new drops. Thank you guys so much for supporting our channel, listening to me plug all this kind of stuff. We really do love making these shirts for you. Now let's get back to Arcane. We then start to see how the relationship between Zahn and Piltover is entirely different in this timeline. The border is no longer a war zone and the streets are cleaner and brighter. We see these events juxtaposed with Jace trudging through the wasteland around him as Heimerdinger plays an Arcane original, Spin the Wheel, sung by his actual voice actor.
Yeah, my dog's got pipes.
He really does. And it's also a great example of just how incredible this series is when it comes to music. The song opens with,
Go spin the wheel and see where it lands.
both Jace and Echo are in realities where the cycle has been broken. They've spun the wheel, and we see where it landed in the scenes that follow. We see young Powder crying over Vi in the same way, pleading for her not to leave, just as she did when Vi abandoned her in the original timeline. Here we learn that tragedy would always define her. It was only a matter of how and in what direction the tragedy would take her. In Jace's reality, we see an abandoned, corrupted ghost town that parallels our first glimpse of the Undercity during B. Miller's Welcome to the Playground. He created the tech to save this city, but now it's in ruins. ruin. The way he carries his hammer across his shoulder is reminiscent of Jesus carrying his cross, showing how the destruction that Hextech caused in this reality is Jace's cross to bear. It becomes an even more obvious metaphor when his hammer breaks his legs after he falls trying to escape the automatons. His greatest tool is now the source of his greatest injury. He even dismantles his hammer to create a knee brace and a cane for him to walk with, just like Victor in Season 1. Now, he's the one with the limp, while Victor has the power and prestige. We then pop back to Echo and Jinx as they have a conversation around the life tree and what would be the Firelight Sanctuary surrounded by dragonflies. In fact, dragonflies are present throughout the episode. Typically, dragonflies symbolize change, another major theme in Arcane.
Because they start off life as aquatic water nymphs until they molt into a dragonfly?
That's impressive entomology skills, Doug. If I were next to you right now instead of in the back of the store looking for this DVD, then I would give you a high five. Now, dragonflies are a fitting symbol, though, given the conversation. Powder straight up asks him,
You want me to change?
and even when he says no, he does. He knows exactly what she is capable of. He knows Jinx, but Powder is at peace with her life just the way it is. She is resistant to change, just like Vi was. Finally, we get everyone on board to create the Z-Drive, something that we've seen teased in the intros all season.
Hey, what's a Z-Drive?
Well, it's a device that allows Echo to create a time loop, but as we see in the episode, it can only take 4 seconds off the clock without mind-blowing repercussions. Whatever Echo touches in the time loop isn't sent back, which is why we can see bits of Heimerdinger's fur on Echo's shoulder. Then we cut to the pregame party for the Innovators competition. Here we see that Vander had Vi's name tattooed on his hand. We also see Silco alive for the first time, even though it was hinted at earlier when we see his face on the scorecards pinned to the wall. In this timeline, he forgives Vander, which proves that if he had found the letter that Jinx found in episode 5, he'd probably still be alive. The DJ drops a record with a crow and Arcane on it, the same one that we saw someone flipping to in the back of the bar earlier. Now, the song that played is this French song,
Mamie there, enemy.
That's actually really close, Doug. Now, essentially, the song is about the paradox of falling in love with an enemy. Some of the translated lyrics include, You are the best thing that happened to me, but also the worst thing that happened to me. I love you, I'm leaving you, but my best enemy is you, which is precisely the conflict Echo feels about slowly falling in love. I love that they tied the enemy part back in, like in the intro.
Hey, person, is it just me or did this whole Powder Echo romance just seem to come out of nowhere?
Well, yeah, I mean, Jinx is a terrorist in Echo's timeline. They didn't really have a chance there, but there's been a hinted romance between them in League lore. He has a few special dialogue lines when interacting with Jinx, including one where he says,
I had a crush until you started talking to the gun.
He doesn't want to leave when he discovers the potential life that he could have had with Powder. He mentions,
You ever wish you could just stay in one moment?
which could be alluding to a now non-canon short story titled Lullaby, where Echo relives his birthday over and over to spend time with his parents. In the end, Echo leaves Powder a necklace with a blue peony on it, which is just an absolute tearjerker, given that blue peonies represent eternal but unobtainable love. As Jace continues walking through the graveyard of his own hubris, he finally arrives at what seems like a statue of himself holding a hammer atop the shattered hex gate. When he asks Victor to send him back, we see the eyes on the statue move from Victor's hands on his shoulder and then back to Jace before surrendering the hammer, showing how the Jace of this universe is still very much alive.
But then how come he didn't Freaky Friday swap with him like Echo did?
That's a plot hole for another video, Doug. Now, as episode 7 comes to a close, we see the improvement Heimerdinger has made to the Z-Drive in order to send Echo home. But in doing so, he sacrifices his life, as we saw foreshadowed in the intro. Or does he?
I mean, he seems pretty dead to me.
Well, League of Legends lore has established Yordles as immortal. When they were supposed to die, they are instead teleported back to their home in Bandle City. So it's possible that he's there and still very much alive. However, with everyone who has been vaporized by Hextech, there seems to be a pattern. Both Victor and Skye sacrificed their mortality too, and in doing so, tapped deeper into the arcane. It's not a stretch to assume that sacrifices may be required to access higher arcane levels. If Heimerdinger knew this, he may have intentionally made himself a martyr. That takes us back to the sacred timeline in episode 8, where we open on Mel escaping the clutches of the Black Rose. Now, like many, we have theorized that the gold engraved in her skin was Solari armor, but it seems that that's not the case. Apparently, her power comes from the Black Rose. It looks different because her rare variation makes her immensely more powerful. The Black Rose attempts to recruit her when her sister gives her a necklace. Now, as she leaves, she is followed by a raven, likely the same three-eyed raven we saw in the finale, but more on that later. As we move on to the intro, we see even more foreshadowing spliced into the familiar opening. As Jinx fires her finger gun, we see a single frame image of a depressed Jinx with her hair down. There's also a frame of Mel at her full power spliced into her scene, as well as a single frame of Victor's automaton when he's putting on his mask. Then we move on to the aftermath of episode 6, starting with Rictus's funeral. He's buried vertically, which is usually a sign of honor in warrior cultures, showing that he stands ready for the afterlife. Ambessa and Singed have preserved Victor inside a cocoon, yet another metaphor for change. He's able to possess his recently deceased followers and speak through them. He then agrees to help evolve the Noxian forces, essentially giving Ambessa an immortal army. We then cut back to Vi, who is just now waking up after being knocked out cold in episode 6. She learns Jinx was arrested immediately following the attack, but when she confronts Kate about it, she learns that it was Jinx's choice to do so.
I didn't even have time to think before they hauled her off.
Kate visits Jinx in her cell, and she's not looking good. She's refusing to eat, her hair is no longer in her signature braided pigtails, and she's picking her nails to the point that they bleed. She is not only grieving the loss of someone she loves, but the guilt she carries is eating her up inside, just like her sister. She's realizing the impact her actions have had and empathizes with that pain in others, which is why she half-heartedly tries to apologize to Kate for killing her mom. Back in Piltover, we see that the council's table has finally been rebuilt after it was destroyed in the season opening. The cracks in the table are filled with gold, representing kintsugi, the Japanese process of repairing broken objects with gold or silver powder. The process is meant to embrace failures and imperfections as a defining part of a person's history, and if you look closely at this crack, you'll see that this one is your mom. It's a powerful metaphor for Mel as well. The golden cracks across her skin mark her imperfections, and they define her too. She tries to get this across to Jace, but they are interrupted by Victor, who speaks to them through his new Automaton 2.0.
Wait, wouldn't these automatons be the old ones, since you know the other ones are from the future?
Right, that makes more sense, but it's new to us. The automaton has 5 marks on its face in the same place that Victor's fingerprints appear on his followers. Now, in our Act 2 breakdown, we mentioned how we didn't understand where Jace's crazy was coming from, and now we're getting that context. After everything he saw in episode 7 and everything he had to do to survive, he is absolutely furious with Victor. He blames him for that nightmarish future, but completely ignores his part in creating it, even after Victor calls him out. When he starts swinging at Victor, we see the automaton touch the top of his head, and the spot where his fingers touch him is explicitly where we see his puppet strings of light emit from in the finale. After Mel takes down Victor's drone, we see Jace's rune has completely absorbed into his arm. The Hex Gem is now a part of him, connecting him even more to Victor. As much as he hates him, he is slowly becoming more and more like him. We then cut back to Jinx and get an incredibly revealing conversation between her and Silco.
Wait, isn't he dead?
Yes, Doug, but she's crazy and also really sad. Silco has been her moral compass throughout this season, and she remembers him optimistically. His eye is blue, not the scary Sith eye that he had last season, and his face looks like it did when he wore makeup to cover his scars. He tells her,
Killing is a cycle.
which is not only the name of the episode,
He said it! He said it!
but it's also heavy foreshadowing for the finale. When Vi tries to bust her out, not only does she call her Jinx, but she immediately embraces her, which is incredibly powerful for Jinx. Vi has finally embraced who she is, even when her Jinx is at her absolute lowest. She loves her when Jinx can't even love herself, and this is where she really starts to understand what Silco is talking about. After she swaps places and locks Vi in the cell, Jinx tells her that she is going to break the cycle, which ironically mirrors Vi sidelining her in the very beginning. Now we finally see where all of these themes of unification are coming together with the new Council of Piltover. The Golden Kintsugi cracks seem more than just symbolic as we see Zahn's leaders sit at the table. Now, everyone is united against Ambessa's gloriously evolved army. While Jace is explaining the magnitude of the threat, we see someone playing the piano alone on stage, which may be the second nod to the character Jin, given that he has a League cinematic where he stages an ambush in a theater while playing a piano just like the one we see here. Kate comes back to free Vi from her cell, just like she did when they first met, and let's just say their relationship comes full circle. It certainly gave players a definitive answer to all their will they, won't they's.
Hey, what's that supposed to mean?
I'll tell you when you're older, Doug. And then we see Mel reunite with her mother, who's now taken her former bodyguard's Kenouryiakis for her own protection.
So what do the Kenouryiakis do again?
Well, they are items that protect against arcane attacks, including Hex Tech, and we see just how she puts them to use in the next episode. Mel accuses her mother of essentially letting her brother die. Ambessa slaps her and says,
I pray you never suffer the agony of being forced to forsake one child to save another.
And we see an actual tear roll down her cheek. Now, as hard as Ambessa is, I truly believe this is a soft spot for her. She may be an opportunist everywhere else, but it's clear that her actions are driven by this grief. Just like Silco in last season, Mel offers Ambessa a way out, but she refuses. Ambessa tells her that
the fact you've come to parley for your friends' lives prove you still lack the wrath necessary to defeat an enemy like the Rose.
Which shows exactly where she differs from Silco. She refuses to let her sentiments get in the way of her goals. Singed then uses the device he created in episode 6 to evolve Victor's powers even further, but in doing so loses Sky, which is yet more validation that sacrifices are required to access higher levels of the Arcane. As Sky fades, he tells her that he will miss their talks, to which she replies with,
"You won't."
Now, this could be taken a number of ways, but seeing as how she was the missing inspiration rune, it's probably because she's not needed anymore. Victor knows his potential. He can achieve perfection. He doesn't need inspiration, especially when he's already become so wrapped up in his own ambition. The episode ends as his followers ascend into the air and transform into his new divine foot soldiers. His face tears apart, revealing his final form, which is distinctly different from his in-game skin in the best ways. His mask, in particular, looks like it takes some inspiration from Warwick, showing how he too has become a beast of war despite his noble intentions. That takes us to the finale, which takes us right back to Jinx having the worst day of her life, visually symbolizing her downward spiral into depression. The song we hear is Wasteland by Royal and the Serpent as she chops it all off and begins dousing various hotspots in Zon with gas before lighting them on fire, including the last drop in Silco's office. This fulfills her commitment from the second episode to
watch it all burn.
As the glass explodes, we see Jinx's reflection in between shards of glass that look like Warwick's teeth around her head, about to strike, but she doesn't seem scared, almost as if she is welcoming it, foreshadowing her final embrace with him at the end of the episode. We watch her pull the pin of a grenade in her hand, one that's still rocking the same monkey topper from her first success in season 1, but Echo is able to rewind the explosion before it can take her. He first calls her powder on accident right after the camera lingers on the money made by the other timeline's powder that she fixed to his Z drive.
I just want to talk to you, pal. Jinx.
It's not only a subtle hint that he hasn't fully adjusted to this new timeline, but also a nod to a unique dialogue interaction his character has with Jinx in Legends of Runeterra.
Powder, never mind.
She continues to try and blow them both up, but Echo keeps looping them back until he finally says,
"Always a dance with you,"
referencing their last dance in episode 7. Then we move into the finale intro, which once again hides some hints about what we're about to see unfold. We see a shot of Jinx with her hair cut off mixed into the first shot of her. We also get an image of Warwick in between Victor and Ambessa's scene, highlighting the fruits of their new allegiance. And finally, we also see a single frame of Victor with his brand new mask woven into the shot of him staring into his old one. After the intro, we start to see all of the final pieces falling into place as Kate, Mel, and Jace prepare for Ambessa's attack on Piltover, which leads directly into the middle of the battle. Arcane's creator Christian Link mentioned in an interview that the finale was originally over an hour long, so some parts had to get cut, which is likely the reason for this hard cut transition. Regardless, the fight is as beautiful as it is consequential. We see a cut on Vi's face that crosses over her name, showing how this battle will eventually take everything from her. This same message is foreshadowed when she discovers the soldier Piltover enforcer she was trying to save is Gert, the Jinxer that we've seen leading Zon's grassroots rebellion. We also see that Piltover has found a way to turn the Hex Gate into an arcane catapult, launching crates at the Noxian forces. Both sides seem to be evenly matched until Ambessa steps into the ring. Despite her pride in being such a fearsome warrior, we've never really seen Ambessa suit up and go toe-to-toe with someone until this point, which is interesting given that she was recently added into the League as a playable character on November 4th. You'd think that they'd want to show her off just a bit sooner. She uses a weapon called the Twin Drake Hounds, which look like the Indian Qatar, but they're chained to her hands like Kratos. We see her use many of her in-game attacks during the battle as well, including her cunning sweep and her spinning lacerate. We also see her put her bodyguards Kanik and Rukern to the test when Kate tries to snipe her, which is yet another reference to Ambessa's in-game ability Repudiation, an ability where she can momentarily shield herself from damage before returning fire. The attack leads Ambessa to pull out her decoy Victor, who's being pulled by a giant shimmering hammered up Noxian guard who looks an awful lot like Scion, a giant, brutish monstrosity from Noxus. Typically, Scion is the muscle for the Black Rose, so it wouldn't make sense for Ambessa to have the actual Scion. However, the chains he's pulling seem to have thorns just like the Black Rose. The chains Ambessa uses for her Drakehounds don't have these thorns, so the answer may be a bit more complicated. Given that Arcane has done its fair share of reworks to the League lore, this very well may be one of them. Caitlyn's enforcers start throwing off gas bombs filled with the Grey from the Undercity, and they try to use the clouds to sneak a bomb deep behind enemy lines. But a nail is stuck in the cogs, preventing it from detonating. Turns out that Maddie sabotaged the bomb because she's been a mole for Ambessa all along.
What? Hey, didn't you recall that out in our last breakdown?
We sure did, Doug, but many of you people in our Discord who thought we were crazy, but who's crazy now?
Yeah, that wasn't very reassuring, person.
I'm here looking at yoga DVDs, Doug, trying to find the DVD you sent me here for. I am going insane. Either way, the signs were everywhere. Maddie came into Kate's life at a very convenient time for Ambessa, so now we can confirm that it was more than just a coincidence. Ambessa then tells Caitlyn,
Desperation is the doorway to oblivion, child.
she's no stranger to desperation. Ambessa has been desperate to rid herself of the Black Rose, and in doing so, she was forced to sacrifice her son. Her words are harsh, but genuine. She knows exactly how desperation can destroy you. In desperation, Kate feels this is what leads her to sacrifice her eye later in the fight. As Maddie attempts to execute Kate, she's saved by Mel's magic using what looks like a summoner spell called Barrier. When Maddie dies, her body falls forward on Caitlyn's right shoulder, the opposite shoulder she was leaning on to comfort her in episode 4. Again, we're seeing these themes of duality crop up again and again. Then we get our big on your left moment as Jinx, Echo, and a team of firelights ride into battle on a giant airship made from Jinx's hideout. The airship features clouds on its wings that match Jinx's tattoos, as well as a green hourglass symbolizing her newly refound allegiance with her time-traveling friend. We can also see the stuffed bunny that Vi gave Jinx on top of the retro record-playing speaker, and 2 latches on the ship match the design we see on Aisha's goggles. Jinx has a new look too, featuring a toothed hoodie. On Riot's official website, it's labeled as the Fishbone hoodie, named after the weapon she fired at Piltover's council, fitting for her final fight in episode 2. The colors in this fight are absolutely breathtaking. As we've seen before, Arcane has been very strategic with how it uses color. Typically, scenes are dominated by one color, often isolating them as the character's individual path. But here, in these multicolored scenes, we see these paths converge. Everyone from Sevica to the giant nameless fish merchant has united in the fight against Ambessa. Jinx is by far the most colorful, and it's not just her outfit either. She's even shooting rainbows from her chain gun. Now, it's all fun and games until they fire a crate at Victor's cocoon, revealing Ambessa's decoy. The real Victor reveals himself to Jace, who's been dismantling the Hex Core. This is where we get to see Victor's final form, and man, is it an upgrade from his skin in the game. Despite the updated look, we do see some key elements of his design, like his piercing yellow eyes, his staff, and most importantly, his weird laser-firing third arm. Now, in-game, these are mostly used as a projectile weapon, but here, they cast a ray of light around his head, resembling how holy figures are often depicted in paintings. We also see his blue cape, which we now know to be the same blanket that Jace wrapped around him in episode 2. Notice that the distortion on his voice goes away slightly when he says,
I am pleased to see you.
To Jace, almost as if the last bit of humanity in him is slipping out. Now, back in the final battle, Vi can now use her gauntlets to propel her forward like she does in the game. We then watch Caitlyn as she sacrifices her eye to catch Ambessa off guard, using her own fourth principle against her. Mel tells her mother,
a wolf has no mercy,
before handing her mother over to the Black Rose, only to destroy them immediately after. Only then does her mother acknowledge that in the end, she has become the wolf with her dying breath.
You are the wolf.
Yeah, what's with all the wolves, person? This is starting to sound like a Dave Filoni joint to me.
Well, Ambessa's kind of obsessed with wolves.
I just think they're neat.
According to her lore, she was raised by a wolf before she came to power, and it caused her to see them as the ideal example of strength. Ambessa believed her daughter Mel's compassion was holding back her true nature, but it's because of what Mel wants to protect in Piltover that she fights as hard as she does, hence why she really is the wolf. As Victor and Jace's conversation heats up, Victor turns off gravity both for himself and the fight above him. Now, as Jinx is flying through the air, she's able to modify her gun to shoot rockets, matching her in-game switcheroo ability, which allows her to change to firing modes. The fight leads Jace and Victor to the top of the Hex Gate, where Jace strikes the same pose we saw him take in his apocalyptic reality in episode 7. Now, when Victor touches Jace's forehead to connect him to the Arcane, he touches him at the top of his head from behind, giving him not only a unique pattern, but it's also the same place the automaton touched his head in episode 8. Echo then rolls in with a piece of debris from the Hex Gate destruction instruction that looks just like his bat in League. He uses the time loop to optimize each pass to his own benefit until he eventually gets stuck in a situation for too long to rewind himself out of it. Then he overloads his Z drive and throws it in Victor's face, which is likely a reference to his ultimate ability, Chrono Break. The impact throws us into a flashback that ties up a lot of loose ends. We learned that a much older version of Victor was the strange man who gifted Jace the rune when he was a child. Victor has tried endless possibilities with gifting different runes to different Jaces across several timelines, but this was the only one that worked. Jace is able to talk him down, and together they vaporize themselves into the Hextech, shutting down his automatrons for good. However, Warwick isn't a machine, and without Victor's control, he's a rabid animal. Vi hesitates with Vander once again, leading Jinx to make the heroic save for her sister.
Ah, dang, person, she really go out like that after all she's done?
Well, Doug, I'm pretty skeptical because there's a lot of evidence out there that she may still be alive, but that is a topic for another video. In the aftermath of the battle, we see Piltover memorializing those they lost by placing their name in a bowl and lighting them on fire. The result creates specks of flame in the air, yet another visual parallel to the Firelight Bridge attack from Season 1. We also see that Singe's daughter has recovered and has somehow freed herself from Victor's hive mind.
I guess some people are just kind of built different.
The final shots show us a three-eyed crow flying around the city, which may be our biggest clue as for what is to come next.
Wait, I thought this was the series finale.
That's true for Arcane, but Christian Link has confirmed that 3 new League of Legends shows are in development and that they will take place in the Demacia, Ionia, and most importantly, in the Noxus region.
Wait, isn't that where Ambess is from?
It is, but Noxus is a big place. It is ruled by a character named Swain, and his familiar is a three-eyed raven. He uses them as scouts and can communicate with them. Something tells me that this one is going to have a lot to report, and that we may just see the results of those reports in League's future shows. The final shot shows an airship flying over the bay as we see a flash frame with the end, except the E in end is shaped to be reversed. Likely a reference to the 3 shows they currently have in development. Oh, hey Doug, is this the video you were looking for?
I don't know. Is that the Hallmark original The Christmas Contest starring Full House's Candace Cameron Bure?
Yes, this is it. Can I finally come back to the front of the store?
Well, the thing is, we gotta find the DVD player. Can you stay back there and look for it for a while?
Ah, jeez. And guys, that is everything we found in the final 3 episodes of Arcane. This show has been such a blast to cover. It is an absolute masterpiece in every way, from the writing to the animation to the score. The team behind Arcane has set a high bar, but if this show is an example of their capabilities, then we cannot wait to see what is next. Huge shout out to Dodson Sites who wrote this video, and Ethan Eng for his invaluable contributions to making this happen, and to all of you for watching our coverage. So, what did you think about Arcane? Are there any important details we missed? Is there anything else about Arcane you want to see us cover? Let me know in the comments, or you can at me on X, Blue Sky, or Threads, or all the other social media stuff, and especially on our free to join Discord. You can find me at Ryan Airy. And if this is your first time here, be sure to subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.